Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Thank you very much, particularly to the last performer for that wonderful rendition which lifted our spirit. Let me begin by saying good evening to all of Diego Martin, especially Diego Martin West, and to all of Trinidad and Tobago who would have joined us here for this very uplifting event here in South Diego Martin Community Center. Ladies and gentlemen, the last few days I've been particularly tired, but sitting here this evening I feel as though something is happening and a weight is being lifted off my shoulder. I feel good about Diego Martin West and I feel good about Trinidad and Tobago. Let me begin by acknowledging representing the young people who have made successful interventions in our administration. The mayor of the borough of Diego Martin. Aquila Glasgow, and she has another name, right? Something is happening. Yesterday, somebody introduced the mayor of Port of Spain as Chinua Townsend. Something is happening. What's happening to me? Anyway, the newest borough in Trinidad and Tobago has a new mayor, a former councillor, who today is representing us in our new borough, which we are all proud of. And permit me to also acknowledge the executive members of the PNM who are here, and executive members of the constituency. I wouldn't name all of you, and also my cabinet colleagues and parliamentary colleagues all. Thank you very much for spending the afternoon and the evening here in Diego Martin. I might keep you a little longer than I had planned to, but I hope you don't mind because I don't know when we'll do this again. But I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge two people who are in this room. One of them is a lady who 37 years ago, when the PNM found itself in opposition for the first time, we were rebuilding the PNM. So we used to have to go all over the country, gathering in twos and threes until it got to tens and twenties and thousands. And there was a lady from Diego Martin who was always there with us because she believed that the PNM would come back, and the PNM was coming back. One night we had a meeting in Rio Claro, and I looked in the audience and there she was, and she traveled alone from Diego Martin to Rio Claro. And I wonder how Miss Ward did that, how she was doing that. Miss Ward, please stand. Please stand and give her a round of applause. PNM to the bone, in or out of office. Mrs. Ward was there to support us whenever we wanted somebody in front of us to speak to. And there's a very special guest here with me this evening, a former classmate of mine, I would say. But more importantly, he's here as the former chairman of the first chairman of the new constituency of Diego Martin Central, Mr. Noel Thompson from Jamaica. And by from Jamaica, I mean he's now living in Jamaica, but he is Trini to the bone. And he was the husband of my classmate who only passed away a few days ago. He's just buried his wife. I couldn't go to the funeral, but I asked him to come and spend some of that time with me. And he's here with me for a few days. First chairman of Diego Martin Central. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is happening, but I wonder why, for the first time, somebody organized all my councillors to come and give an obituary about the member of parliament. I think I'll be working for Foster. I think something is happening which I need to know. Because I had planned to come and talk about what I had done, thinking that that would mean that you would allow me to continue doing what I've been doing well. But when all these councillors come up here and begin to talk about what the member of parliament has done, I think you're all going to believe I sent them. I had nothing to do with it. But I'm wondering why it was done, and I think Jackie has something to do with that. Because you see, anytime Jackie comes up front and takes office in this country, anybody who knows PNM and knows Jackie, they know election coming. And if election is coming, and the councillors are talking about the member of parliament in that way, and I know that I'm the only person from my class who's still working, something is happening. But ladies and gentlemen, I think it is good for us to reflect on the progress that we've made, because elections have consequences. And because you, the constituency of Diego Martin West, you have supported my intervention as your representative since 1991, you caused me to serve 3 terms in the opposition. And the number of terms, in fact, I was just calculating it there. I spent 15 years in opposition. And I spent 22 years in government. And during that time, I represented the development of the people and the community of Diego Martin West. And if I had to choose it all over again, I would have it no other way but to represent the people of Diego Martin West. You have been probably the most hardworking, loyal, and understanding constituency in the country. And for that, I'm grateful to have been your representative. But it wasn't just about representing you. It was about the progress that we have made, because we have made some substantial progress. Diego Martin has been a growing community. It is still probably one of the best places in the country to live. And we, through our political intervention and the representation that you have afforded me on your behalf, we have better schools, or we have schools when they didn't have any. When we started out, there was one school in Carnage, all the boys and the girls were cramped in, they were overcrowded by 100%. Today we have a Carnage girls' school and a Carnage boys' school, and our children are doing better than before. We got schools. One of my best schools is the new wing we just built on Diego Martin Girls RC. And whenever I feel down, I go visit them, and they lift my spirits just to see those children in school. Diego Martin Girls RC, one of the better primary schools in the country. You in Diego Martin West, you have some of the best health centers, some of the best health facilities. In the middle of COVID, we built one of the finest facilities in Diego Martin, and it continues to serve. And of course, right next to it, you've just got your library. And I trust that you're using it well. Sporting facilities, there's none better than the one in North Diego Martin. And what we're going to do there, the in-house work is going on, because right now, we've used your common playing field to build that facility. So there's no open-air common playing field in Northern Diego Martin. We have to do the relocation of a few people so that we can replace the facility that we've taken, so that there could be an open savanna for people to go and kick their ball and play a little bit of cricket or even walk around without having to get permission to go into an enclosed facility. That is coming, and that will complete the facilities in North Diego Martin. You know, you've got a brand new police station in Karanaj, and you've got good quality housing, better than virtually anywhere in the country. Victoria Keys, we cut the hill in Victoria Keys, and we built Movie Town, reclamation area, worth billions today. And we used the ground foundation to build that quality of housing. And of course, you have your overpass, and you have the park in West Moorings, which is one of the finest in the country, with 1,000 people wanting it for themselves. But your MP lost a few friends keeping it for you. My friend Noel, who I just mentioned, he used to live in Victoria Gardens. He cannot find his way around in there now or to get there now because he'd be completely lost. Because we have so improved the infrastructure around between West Mall and Victoria Gardens that a foreigner who has just come to visit after a few years of absence will understand and exclaim as he has about what wonderful things he would see in the area that was his neighborhood. Things have changed in Diego Martin, and for that I'm proud to have been able to be associated with you as our community has made that progress that we have made. When you wanted a speaker to join me this evening, I could have picked any member of the cabinet who could have come here and could have given you a detailed discourse on his or her portfolio, as you have heard from the Minister of Public Utilities. Any one of them. Because the government that I have led for the last 9 years, we focus on getting things done, especially fixing problems. You would have heard him mention desilting the Hillsborough Dam. You think is now we were supposed to be doing that? Since I was Minister of Planning and Development in 2004, that project was on the drawing board. There were those who came into government, spent billions, and that project was not even on the priority list. It took your member of parliament from Diego Martin West to go to Tobago with this minister and get it done. So we've removed from that dam millions of cubic meters of silt so that the dam can hold water instead of silt. And that is why he could come here today and report on this dramatic improvement in the water supply in Central Tobago. That's why it goes. And you think all the projects he mentioned there in all those small communities couldn't have been done before? Could have been. But elections have consequences. It depends on who you put in office and what they do with the resources that we have. That's what it is. And that's what we have been doing. So while we can point to a legacy and a pathway to progress here in Diego Martin West, I dare say, for any constituency in this country, this government, this PNM government, can point to any constituency and say, we have made some significant progress in that constituency. And as for the national landscape, I just want to let you know that it is easy to follow the constant flow of negative conversation and to believe that this country is about social media and the negative that flows. One gets the impression, if you listen to those who appoint themselves makers of the national narrative, that nothing is happening in Trinidad and Tobago, nothing good. I am sure many of you in this room would have been completely taken back and surprised by what you heard today as what is happening with respect to the water sector. And as for TNTech, no news is good news. Good news. But there's something you need to know about TNTech. TNTech is carrying a huge government debt, billions of dollars owed by TNTech for gas that is used to generate electricity, which the government is responsible for the payment of that debt. And every so often, we have to make a payment to keep body and soul together, because we in Trinidad and Tobago enjoy a very good supply of electricity, very reliable, widespread across the country. But we do have an imbalance between the generating costs and the revenues that come from that. And of course, having said that, you will hear a crazy lady tomorrow getting up and saying, tomorrow is Monday? Monday? Get up and say, the Prime Minister said they're going to raise electricity rate. I'm just informing you about the facts. Another fact you would have seen is that the power station in Port of Spain has gone. Have you observed that? We no longer generate electricity from fuel, from liquid fuel. It's all by gas, and there's no power station in Port of Spain. The power stations are outside. As a matter of fact, the reason why that could have come out in the way it came about is because the bulk of the power that is being generated in this country now is generated from South Trinidad and fed up to North Trinidad, because the big power plant that was built for this aluminum smelter ended up with nothing to do after they canceled the aluminum project. Get that? We built a power station, I think it's about 700 megawatts, 720 megawatts. Half of the country's power generation from that plant, because to generate electricity to deal with aluminum, you require that power. When that plant was built, the government changed, and the country never stepped forward into aluminum because the UNC government canceled the aluminum project. So we had this plant owing millions on it, so we had to use it. So it has been made to supply the domestic supply, and the government is paying the debt for you. So when you say the government ain't doing nothing for me, remember that somebody's paying you a significant portion of your electricity bill. And if you want to know how much of that bill the government is paying, ask my friend Noel what he's paying in Jamaica, and what they're paying in Barbados, and what they're paying in Grenada, and what they're paying in the United States. And that's how it goes. But you never see those stories educationally in this country, so that the population could understand our realities. They bring it right down to personalities. Where there are problems, it comes down to personalities. So it's Rowley, it's Mr. Hines, it's Marvin, and they encourage the population to think along those lines. And all that does is make it more difficult to solve the country's problems and make people believe that life is not what they see or what they know, that something else exists. Something else is the problem. Something else is the fault. We in this country, we need to face our realities, and therefore we can handle them more sensibly if we know what is going on. And only the PNM takes this country down a road of common sense and reason and progress. Only the PNM. We can talk about the area of finance. We have been managing this country for the last 9 years. in a very difficult period where finance is concerned. But because we set out to make the best of even a bad situation, we have been able to cope, we have been able to manage, and we have been able to prevent catastrophes in the financial area. Some people have the solution, and the solution is very simple. Very, very simple. And that is just devalue the currency. We still get a kind of advice, just devalue the currency. And some amazing conversations are published. Just as I was coming out of the house this afternoon, as I was coming through the door, I saw the papers, which I put there this morning. I haven't had a chance to read them yet. But as I was going through, I just stopped and I flicked a few pages, and one page caught my attention. It was a prominent economist, a go-to economist in this country, giving somebody in the media a story that somehow $22 billion, $25 billion is missing from this country, and every year we lose $2 billion US. Well, I didn't have the time to read the rest of the story. I just read the headline and the first paragraph. I don't have to read the rest of the story to ask, what kind of jackassness is that? But I'll read it when I go home. I have to read it because I want to know what the population is being told by people who are go-to people who provide the narrative in this country. Where in God's name is that money coming from to be lost? And somebody could compute that you're losing that. And it's not anybody, no any ordinary person, you know. It's one of the people who provide economic analysis to this country. And that is the kind of madness and dotishness that the population is fed. And that is why you end up making some decisions that are not in your best interest. It was bad enough if somebody from the parliament opposition had said that, because that is normal for them. But when someone who claims to be a professional economist, who pontificates on the monetary and fiscal policy of this country and the central bank operations and our finances, could get him or herself quoted like that, something has to be radically wrong with us. But the PNM stands between you and that kind of dotishness. And it's only when you listen to the PNM, you hear the facts. As I have a colleague who speaks about the true facts. It's only when you listen to the PNM, you hear the facts of our circumstances. Or you see the reality of our circumstances. So, we take time to ensure that we look after the country's finance, the country's energy situation, the country's health situation. And we can't talk about health without mentioning our experience during COVID. All I could say to you all here in Diego Martin West, had the PNM not been in office during COVID, many more thousands would have died. And for those who believe that it was accidental or it don't mean nothing, I could tell you, a few months ago, the WHO had a very important meeting. I think it was in Geneva or somewhere in Europe. And the Director General of the WHO invited me to come to that meeting because he wanted the gathering at that WHO meeting to hear about the experience of Trinidad and Tobago during COVID. Because as far as WHO was concerned, the way Trinidad and Tobago managed COVID was an exemplary experience in the WHO. I had to decline the offer because I had other priorities at the time. But I tell you this so that you could know that you would never see that in a Trinidad and Tobago newspaper. Right? But you will hear people talking about going to court about how the government managed COVID. Going to court. To tell the court what? That they survived COVID thanks to the PNM. But that is normal in Trinidad and Tobago, ladies and gentlemen. So, in public administration, we have solved some of the intractable problems. We have completed the renovation of the parliament and a number of legacy buildings that they had left to rot, including President House. As a result of completing the parliament renovation, we were able in public administration to come out of the waterfront tower where the parliament was and to use those spaces for a number of courts. All the civil courts of this country are now in that building where the parliament was temporarily housed. And the Hall of Justice is now available for only 100% use in the prosecution and administration of the criminal justice system. That's what it is. We came out of renting on Sackville Street, the Ministry of Health. Today, one of the finest buildings in Port of Spain is the new Ministry of Health done by a public-private partnership on Queen's Park East. And of course, in a few months, in this very difficult period, we will be able to open, in the early part of next year, the brand new 530-bed hospital in Port of Spain in the Central Tower that's underway. Construction is underway right now of a new head office for the Ministry of Social Development to serve you, the people, especially our elderly, who rely on that ministry for a program that we have not diminished in any way. In fact, we have improved it in a period of great difficulty. Every year we budget upwards of $5 billion in that Ministry of Social Development to hand the people the wherewithal to keep body and soul together, whether it is through pensions, whether it is for the disabled, or whether it is one-off interjections. That ministry in many households is responsible for putting food on the table or keeping children fed and looked after. But in Trinidad and Tobago, just bad talk everything, just bad talk everybody. Right? That's what it is. Very soon, you here in Diego Martin will have the freshest, cleanest, safest vegetables to eat, because we want to change the diet in this country. Professor Beckles spoke in the Savannah 2 days ago, or was it yesterday? Today is 2 days ago. And he made a point about the effect of our poor diet of sugar, fat, and salt, and the outcome of the ravages of diabetes and high blood pressure on our population. And he called for an intervention to change that. That intervention is to shift from those dietary components to fresh fruits and fresh vegetables. We have young people who have been trained. And I could tell you now, I'm the happiest man in this part because I've finally seen the first crops have been sown under the shade houses in Chagaramas, and very soon, large volumes of fresh vegetables at affordable prices would be available from the west, going east and going to central. That's how it's going to go. And all I could say to you is to encourage you to eat it. That's all. Eat it. Buy it and eat it. You'll do yourself a favor. There's nothing better than fresh vegetables in your diet. Get away from the fats and the sugar and the grease and the whatever else you've been eating. And that will lift us from being what Professor Beckles called the sickest population in the world. You all have no idea what that means financially. Because if you could reduce the amount of people looking for hospital care because of how we have lived, it's like printing money. because we have committed ourselves to fund healthcare for the population. And if you don't have the money to keep funding more and more sick people, it seems like common sense to generate less and less sick people. That's how you deal with it. Ladies and gentlemen, the level of dotishness that is fed to you is appalling. But you see, there are some people in this country who have the national stage. They control the national narrative, and they're downright dangerous. I just came back from the heads of government meeting in Grenada. The meeting was supposed to take place a few weeks ago, but the hurricane came at the same time the meeting was scheduled for, and it was postponed to last day. So I was there on Sunday, and the meeting was due to end on Wednesday, so I went on Sunday morning, came back on Wednesday evening. While I was there, my good friend and colleague, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, we sit next to one another, because S&T very close. And he spent the whole 2 days teasing me about sandals and telling me about the wonderful effect of sandals on the economy of St. Vincent. For those of you who don't know, it is the sandals project that was supposed to go to Tobago that ended up in St. Vincent. So Ralph was giving me chapter and verse that when he heard that Tobago had turned down the sandals project, he called Butch Stewart and said, "Come and see me, St. Vincent want it." That project is going full speed ahead, employing 1,000 people and supporting hundreds of farmers in St. Vincent. Tobagonian politicians wanted no part of it because they felt that it would have brought political benefit to the people's national movement. That's what it was. That's all that it was. You think it ended there? You think stupidity is only in Tobago with sandals? I went to India recently, and I spoke to a number of, as a matter of fact, I was passing through India. I came from Africa, and I was passing through India in what I thought would have been an informal visit to one of the major business houses in India, the Reliance company, which is, I think, probably the largest Indian company. They invited me to come because we had some common interest in cricket, because I chair a committee at CARICOM on cricket, and Pollard is connected to Reliance. So we got to talking, and they got to know a bit more about Trinidad and Tobago. And in the scheme of international cricket business, I was invited to come and see them to see what they're doing there and compare that with what they want to do in Trinidad and Tobago. So I took the opportunity to go there. When I got to India, the authorities in India converted that visit to a full-fledged official visit. It's a good thing the High Commissioner was on the ball and his wife could buy clothes quickly. And it also included people who never heard about the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. But I, as number one salesman, I wasn't fazed. I spoke to them at length. I landed in a dinner the night, my first night was a dinner, and I want to thank one of my proteges here, who was very instrumental in organizing from Trinidad while I was in India and getting the connections going there, and that is Senator Renuka Segram Singh Suklal. Give her a hand. Between Renuka and our High Commissioner in India, we did a lot of work during those few days I was in India. And the end result of that, and my interventions there in Mumbai, the High Commissioner and a couple of the businessmen decided, look, let us go, in response to the Prime Minister's invitation, let us go and visit Trinidad and Tobago and see whether it is a place that we can do business. Because these people are constantly investing. They're constantly looking for a place to invest. We in Trinidad and Tobago, we are constantly looking for foreign direct investment, investors to come to our country and invest, bring money and invest in our country. And we had a good thing going there. One of the people who that delegation wanted to be associated with and to bring here was a gentleman called Mr. Jindal, Naveen Jindal, who I've never heard about before. Mr. Jindal turns out to be the chairman of one of the largest companies in India. Like Reliance, these are mega companies. And to come to Trinidad and Tobago is crossing the first hurdle just to come here, just to talk to us, just to see us. That's one of the major hurdles. Because I believe if they come and they talk to us, one or two of them may do some of that in international investment in Trinidad and Tobago. Jindal was not in India. He was in South America, in Venezuela. So when I got back here, I got a communication through Foreign Affairs that he wanted to come from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago on the way back out of South America. No problem. I was very happy to receive him. He came here and said he has realized that we have opportunity for investment, and he, like the others who came, would want to consider Trinidad and Tobago. That's what courtesy calls are about. And that was the end of it. We had at the time the oil company, I think it's Paria. The company is Guaracara, but the business is being done by Paria. They had a public invitation out to the world. It's called a Request for Proposal, RFP. To the world, we are inviting, if you're interested, send us your proposal, and by the end of July 28th, July 31st, we'll open wherever they were going and see what we have. So when Mr. Jindal came here, there was no proposal from him. He was one of those who thought it was interesting, and he had until the 31st of July to put in a proposal. Man came, he visited, he left. And the opposition leader launched an attack on Naveen Jindal. And he's a scamp, he's corrupt, he's charged for XYZ, and he's a criminal, and the government should not talk to him. And there's the little short one from Sawa. Walk and wine, right? He had a lot to say about me being involved in scandal with Jindal, the one called Wade Mark. And all that happened is a number of Trinidad and Tobago politicians launched an attack on Naveen Jindal personally. This is a man who is chairing a conglomerate that produces 40% of India's steel and has investments around the world. I received a letter from Mr. Jindal on the 26th of July. And this is after having come to Trinidad and Tobago, expressing an interest in our mothball refinery. He said, like most people who know anything about the refinery, it would involve an investment of approximately $700 million US. Because the refinery, one of the reasons why it was a money loser for us is because the refinery is obsolete. And to bring it back into operation, any common sense, any good sense would mean that you have to upgrade it significantly. One of the upgrades is to put in some modern technology in the management of the refinery, the physical management, where you have people watching a dial. Some of those dials are 100 years old. Nowadays, the technology exists that you can literally put those on digital automation. And you have to spend money to do that, to bring the refinery to that kind of age of operation. So you would have to spend some significant money on doing that, as well as the operational money. So the investment looked like in the order of $700 million US. And this is from a company that has the ability to do it. Not like people who want the refinery but they can't pay their lawyer. They can't pay their accountant. They're singing Calypso and burning my picture. But they want refinery. I am talking about a company, a multi-billion-dollar company. And the only thing that could have happened from the other side of the parliament is to launch an attack on the man. So he's written to me, let me just quote a couple of paragraphs for you. Dated 26th of July, addressed to me. I wish to express my deepest, it's me, he calls me Your Excellency. I wish to express my deepest gratitude for the warm hospitality extended to me and my team during our recent visit to Trinidad and Tobago. The opportunity to pay a courtesy visit on June 17, 2024, and explore the possibility of participating in the Guacara refinery bidding process was both enlightening and inspiring. It was a privilege to discover more about Trinidad and Tobago's wealth of natural resources, the industrious and creative spirit of the people, and the initiatives your leadership has championed. The Jindal Group is one of India's foremost industrial conglomerates, with investments exceeding $25 billion and global operations in steel, mining, power, and infrastructure sectors spread over India, Australia, the Middle East, and Africa. This dedication to excellence has enabled us to build a substantial presence on the world stage. It is with great disappointment, therefore, that I must address the reaction led by the official opposition parties following our visit. The character assassination I experienced merely for considering the investment opportunity in the Guacara refinery was deeply disheartening and discouraging. Moreover, the unjust attacks directed at our group's companies, entities that operate independently and are unconnected to legal matters, mischaracterized in the local press and parliament, set a troubling precedent for potential investors planning to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. He continued, having served 3 times as a member of parliament in my own country, I understand the vital role that constructive opposition plays in a healthy democracy. However, in my respectful view, the behavior exhibited by the opposition in this instance risks causing significant economic and reputational damage to Trinidad and Tobago. Such actions will likely deter potential investors, leading to missed opportunities for economic growth and job creation, and ultimately disadvantaging the people who would benefit from these investments. From our organization's point of view, these actions by the purported government in waiting raise serious concerns as they represent an element of risk and potential instability that is incompatible with providing a predictable and secure investment climate. Consequently, these developments have shaken confidence, and our companies have felt compelled to reassess the viability of proceeding with a formal bid for the refinery at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an investor who was prepared to consider putting in a bid in the offer of approximately $700 million to bring that refinery into operation. And the only people in this country who don't want that to happen is a handful of politicians who don't care if you eat the bread the devil need, because they prefer to have the refinery there, talking stupidness about it, than to see it restarted and operated in a different way for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. This is sandals all over again. All over again. The same way the people of Trinidad and Tobago are now ruining the loss of that opportunity. I would say tonight that as a result of the behavior of parliamentarians who should be encouraging investment, but of course they went to India too. And the only thing on record for their visit to India is that they fall down on Gandhi's statue foot when they were drunk. And you know, hear it. Well, we should not be dealing with Jindal because Jindal on some charge for some piece of land that the company got that somebody said was corruptly done. That was it. But let me ask you a question. Who is saying that? The opposition leader who, when the chairman of Mayaro Corporation was charged for bribery, she left him there to serve out his whole term. Remember that? When the one on the tender committee in Sandy Grande was arrested for whatever fraudulent conduct, she left him there. Today, she has appointed a chief whip in the parliament who is on $1 million bail. That's okay. And she tells you that Anand Ramlogan is the best lawyer in this country because he was charged and is charged for criminal conduct. But Jindal is to be chased away. But let me ask you all a question. Since we're not supposed to do any business with the Jindal group of companies, because we were never going to be doing any business with Jindal per se. These are corporate entities, and there's a corporate veil. And of course, if we follow her advice, as I said before, Boeing was charged for criminal conduct a few weeks ago and pled guilty. Didn't even allow them to be tried. They pled guilty. We have a number of planes in CAL that are Boeing planes. And we have on order more planes from Boeing. So therefore, according to Kamla Prasad Bisesa, we're supposed to cancel and stop that. But more importantly, as a result of the matter with the unfortunate incident with the divers, the DPP has now instructed the police to use the evidence of the Commission of Inquiry to see whether any person or any company, including Paria, could be charged for criminal conduct, including manslaughter. Is Mrs. Prasad Bisesa saying that we must now close down Paria because nobody should be doing business with Paria because the DPP say that there's possible criminal conduct there to be looked at? And if in fact a charge is laid against Paria as a company or an individual in Paria is charged, we have to stop doing business with Paria. So we'll go and put gas in the car quicker. Because Paria will not be able to import any fuel because they would have been charged. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the kind of nonsense that is offered to us as an alternative to the PNM. But all of it has to do with a politics of failure, which is what they require on our part for them to succeed. The same way Duke could have told Sandals owners, and Sandals a family business, just like Jindal, a family business. And when you behave like that, they don't need us, we need them. So when they started implying that the Sandals family was involved with some underhandness with the Prime Minister, and Rowley this and Rowley that, and Butch Stewart this, all Butch Stewart, the Stewart family said, we don't need that. And they walk away to St. Vincent and have Ralph Gonzalez laughing at me. That's what it is. Not in St. Vincent. Curacao got one too. I was talking to the Prime Minister of Curacao last week. Curacao has now joined CARICOM as of a week ago, a few days ago. Curacao is now the newest member of CARICOM. And you know what you're telling me about? The new Prime Minister talking to me. Talking about Sandals and the role Sandals play in the economy in Curacao. But Tobago couldn't have a Sandals because to have had it, is for the PNM to have got a benefit politically that somebody thought. But why is that surprising to any of you? When the PNM set about to build the Claude Noel Highway that you all drive on from the airport to Scarborough, that road, when the PNM set about to build that road in Tobago, our political opponents were furious and mobilized their supporters and encouraged them to go and lie down in front of the bulldozers to prevent it. And they stopped the project. Mutilal Munan was the contractor, and they encouraged people not to cooperate with the government's relocation in Smithfield. Mutilal had the contract, and Mutilal said, I want to start in Smithfield. But the government couldn't deliver the Smithfield site because the population was being kept there by the opposition. They said, Mutilal, well, start in Bacolet or start. No, I want to start in Smithfield. We couldn't give him Smithfield. He said, well, pay me off. Mutilal was paid off, and a new contractor had to be hired. And I distinctly recall the pain of that, because the new contractor cost $44 million at that time. That is how the Claude Noel Highway was paid. So why are you all... That is the history. But you will never see that in a newspaper in this country. You will see some nameless, faceless idiot opposing the latest project to build a hotel at Rocky Point. Rocky Point, which was approved as a hotel site since under the IDC. After the IDC, it was TIDCO, then E-Tech. And just as the water projects you heard about now didn't happen because the right people didn't make it happen, on that site, which passed through all those entities, a project is lined up for there today because this government has pushed that project and is encouraging local investment to invest in hotel rooms in Tobago because we need hotel rooms to build the economy of Tobago. But in that scenario, you still have people who are prepared to put their personal position, some of it quite incompetent, irrelevant, and immaterial to the country's development. Push that forward. That will get 2 pages in the newspaper, trying to make a case against the project, without offering a single alternative as to where the next Tobagonian will get a job as a manager or as a service provider of any kind. But they have a problem with the PNM, because the PNM represent the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We are no ordinary party. Let me just touch on one other thing for you. We met at CARICOM last Monday evening. Whenever we have CARICOM meetings, there's something called a caucus, where only the prime ministers and maybe accompanied by a foreign minister, we meet behind closed doors because some public business is confidential. And you can speak more frankly in that environment than when you have plenary sessions and everybody's there to hear and to misrepresent or to represent. So we meet in caucus for a period of time in all the heads of government meeting. So Monday evening, we met in caucus at a hotel in Grenada. And the bulk of the time, we convened about 4 o'clock in the evening, and we met until 10:30 at night. 80% of that time was spent on the issue of crime, violence, and criminality in our territories. There are those in Trinidad and Tobago who will tell you that the problem of that nature is because of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Energy, and the Minister of National Security. But I can tell you, every single one of the prime ministers who were there had this fierce urgency to have CARICOM focus on this matter because it is a problem in every CARICOM territory. Whether it is Jamaica, Barbados, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada. And we discussed we walked with some of us with our attorneys general, because we are currently engaged in reviewing the whole system that we have operating in our country. I could tell you one thing that was common in the presentations of the heads meeting on this subject, and it is the whole question, one, of the inordinate delay in dispensing justice, and two, the disconnect between the decision makers in the judiciary and those who experience crime and criminality on the streets or in their homes. CARICOM prime ministers are in fact flabbergasted that some people believe that we are not yet sufficiently under the gun, literally and figuratively, when they make decisions about the few criminals who we put our hands on. And in that exercise, I, representing Trinidad and Tobago, had our Attorney General do for me a list of the state of affairs with our law with respect to penalties and offenses under the Firearms Act, Trinidad and Tobago. And I want you all, I'll do a little quiz with you all. Tell me if you ever hear anybody in this country get penalized in any way in keeping with what I'm going to read out here to you. Possession of firearm and ammunition without a license. Prevalent in this country, is that so? Under summary conviction, meaning a magistrate, that could bring you $500,000 or 15 years in jail. If it is done indictably, meaning judge and jury, 20 years in jail is the penalty. And if there's a subsequent offense, like your second time or your third time, that is 25 years imprisonment. Have you ever heard anybody in this country being penalized like that? Possession of a prohibited weapon. Summary conviction, a fine of $1 million or 15 years in jail. And if it's indictable, it's 20 years or 25 years if it's a repeat offense. This one had me kind of possession of pepper spray without a permit. Stiff law. Fine of $250,000 or 5 years in jail. That's summary conviction. And a repeat offender charged indictably, life imprisonment. Making a false statement in application for a firearm. Indictable, $50,000 or 5 years in jail. First offense, if it's indictable. No, summary conviction, $50,000 or 5 years. If it's indictable, $750,000 or 15 years in jail. Repeat offense, prison, life. Selling or transferring firearms or ammunition to an unauthorized person. Let me repeat that. Selling or transferring firearms or ammunition to an unauthorized or unauthorized persons. Summary conviction there is $500,000 or 10 years in jail. If it's done indictably, 20 years imprisonment, 25 years if it's a repeat offense. Let me stick up in here for you all. Did you all hear me in the parliament saying that what we have discovered in one of the investigations going on now is that police ammunition end up in the SSA, unbeknownst to the National Security Council, an SSA that was not supposed to have those weapons, and we're still trying to figure out how police weapons end up in the SSA? You now understand why somebody getting on crazy so? Because selling or transferring firearms or ammunition to unauthorized persons is a serious offense. That could bring you 10 years in jail. trafficking of firearms or prohibited weapons. Does that happen in Trinidad? A fine of $1 million or 15 years, summary conviction, or 20 or 25 years indictable. Possession of firearm with intent to injure is a daily occurrence in this country. The penalty for that, under Section 12, is imprisonment for life. Well, I don't know very many people have firearms in the criminal element without an intent to injure. But the penalty is huge. Use of an imitation firearm in the commission of an offense, 25 years in jail. Possession of firearm while trespassing, that is home invasion. The penalty for that is $250,000 or 15 years in jail. And if you do it habitually, mean more than once, that is a life imprisonment. Manufacture or assembly of a firearm or ammunition without approval, Section 15. Summary conviction on that, $750,000 or 15 years in jail. First offense indictable, 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I read that out for you so that you would not be confused and continue to be misled by people who tell you that it is the parliament that's supposed to act. Is the parliament supposed to pass more law? Is the parliament supposed to do this? Is the parliament... You ever hear anybody in this country get them penalties? You ever hear that? Why? It is because some people believe that the situation is not bad enough to apply what the parliament says should apply. When they meet you in the dark street, or your grandmother at home with a pension check, they're like the devil in hell. But when they appear in the court, they put on the best suit and the best clothes and get a lawyer to come and say he's a good boy, it's a first offense. But Parliament has intervened and has put those penalties in place. And the population is led to believe that the problem is with the parliamentarians. And the reason why the criminals have no respect for the enforcement of law in this country is because there's no proper enforcement of law, so they don't regard what the parliament has put in place, because I don't believe they know that. The people who walk our streets in some of our communities waving guns as if they're a walking stick, you think they know they could get life imprisonment for that? So you know what some CARICOM governments are doing right now? One government had passed laws to try to force the enforcement of these kinds of laws. Immediately, the judiciary in that country struck it down. You can't do the boys that. My colleague, who had that experience, left the CARICOM meeting on Tuesday afternoon to go back home because they were going back to the parliament again to pass in that, or try to pass in that parliament, or I should say pass because they have only one, they have very little opposition, to pass into parliament legislation that put in minimums and maximum. Minimum sentences dictated by parliament. But in the discussion, if that law is passed, we're not sure that the judiciary wouldn't strike it down and say, no, you can't say what the minimum for that is. It is our discretion. And it is that discretion being utilized without fetter, which caused you to answer me that you have never heard anybody in this country penalized or penalized in a consistent way here. So criminals will know that if you do those things, that is the penalty. Our society, through its parliament, has put that in place for you if you have chosen crime as a way of life or chosen a weapon to menace or kill or maim people in this country. Because some people believe the situation is not bad enough yet to warrant that. The last one I read there for you. Manufacture or assembly of firearms You know what's happening in this country now? As we tighten up the borders around, those who choose crime and criminality as a way of life and want to ship weapons into our country, you know what they're doing? They bring them in different pieces. Bring a piece in Point Lisas, a piece in Port of Spain, a piece in Tobago, and then they have the assembly. There was one case of a factory in South that was found. And I think it was a foreigner was doing it. A foreigner, as far as I remember. He was making ammunition using modern technology, 3D printing. He got a $100,000 bail. $100,000 bail. You hear the penalty that Parliament says should happen? He got put on $100,000 bail. And what is worse with the bail system, I don't want to go into that tonight because you all heard about that in the Parliament. Once bail is so easily available and the court is constipated and clogged the way it is, when you're on bail, you're good to go for a number of years. Because the bail system is not working for the citizen, it's working for the criminal. One CARICOM country is attempting to legislate that once you're convicted, while you appeal, you should stay inside. Because, brother, in our system here, conviction comes decades after. And then if you want a few more decades of freedom to roam, just appeal it. And then you could wait until the Englishman 30 years later say, but that's too harsh. The problem I'm pointing out here is that the criminals in our country have no regard for the law-abiding because they have no fear of the consequences. But the Parliament has legislated consequences that are serious, driven, but only if things get bad enough. And the question is, how bad does it have to get for the Parliament to review this? Some of our colleagues are currently in the Parliament or have just come out of the Parliament. Grenada has just made some serious adjustments to their laws there to bring them in line with Trinidad and Tobago's laws. But it's not more law. It's an understanding of what we're dealing with. And right now, there's no real understanding of that by the population because the national narrative is deficient or deliberately misleading. All of what I told you here has nothing to do with the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister's office. I'm a bystander looking on at that. Because once the police put their hand on you, the government can't intervene. In fact, even before the police put their hand on you, the government can't even tell the police which direction to look. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister, according to them, ain't supposed to talk to nobody in the police service. Just wait there to be blamed for somebody who has committed the most heinous crime, and then somebody is asked, what is the Prime Minister doing about that? We need to get serious in this country. And the first thing we have to do is to understand our circumstances. Whether it's in the home, on the job, in the office, or on the railway, we need to understand our circumstances. And in this scenario, where I've just picked out a few of our issues, the only political entity that engages these issues and take responsibility for the people at whatever political cost is the People's National Movement. Today is the 3rd of August. The term of office that you gave us, 80% is gone. The last term. We have 20% of our term left. We will make sure that we make full use of that 20%. But as campaign manager Jackie has just said, gird your loins, trim your lamps, because the bridegroom will come at any hour. Ladies and gentlemen, we in the PNM, we're ready like Freddy. And this month, we start, this is an election year. In an election year, it's any month, any day is election day. Only the PNM, one constituency could fill a hall like this in Trinidad and Tobago. Only the PNM could stick to a constitution and have elections for a constituency and present an executive like we did today. Only the PNM could randomly call a minister to come here and report to you on the progress of that portfolio. Today it was water, tomorrow is energy, the next day is education, the next day is health. Only the PNM could do that in this country. So we could go to the polls anytime, any day, and the people of this country will have the opportunity. You will have the opportunity to say you want that or you want that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no joke. This is the future of this country and the children's future. Our revenues are very challenged because our production levels in oil and in gas are down because our fields are drying up. We have put things in place for the medium term on that. So between now and 2027, it's a difficult period. And anybody who is offering you a safe and soft landing and a soft passage in there, asking you to buy chat in bag. It is only the PNM that tells you up front what the situation is. How ridiculous can it be? We talk about surviving. We talk about managing without devaluing the currency. We talk about maintaining a social program to help those who are least able to help themselves. We talk about supporting more young people in the university. We talk about ensuring that the healthcare has the best technology available in our hospitals. Them talking about open back Refinery and open back Refinery. Say anything. Say anything. But I passed through that. I used to go to a maths class when I was just left school doing some advanced mathematics, and they put in front of me a problem to solve. I looked at it and it looked kind of hard, but I see some way I could deal with that. And the teacher was passing down the corridor, and I said, right. And I asked him, I said, could I do this and get that and do this? And he looked at me like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Could I do this? And then, yeah, you could do any stupid thing you want. And then I realized that on my own. That is where Trinidad and Tobago is today. People offering you no safe way out of your problems, but could say anything from a distance, knowing full well that all they want out of this is you playing the fool and putting them back into office, and as far as they're concerned, mission accomplished. But the PNM's mission is not accomplished until the people are served and served well, and their children have a future. And that is what keeps me agitated, that's what keeps me energized, and that is what keeps me motivated. And I tell you, 33 years in this business, Diego Martin West, and we never get weary yet. We never get weary yet, because we are the people's national movement. And I am particularly pleased and particularly proud about the progress and advancement of our young people in our organization. Young people come forward and take responsibility for this country, and do so with the people's national movement. And I want to say something to the young people in the PNM too. Office is not a certificate to play the fool. When I'm asked, what is my legacy? The only thing I can point to, and I want to point to, is that while I was leader of the PNM, I ensured that at the appropriate time, the appropriate transition was made, and the PNM, the organization, the PNM, is left in good hands for posterity and for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my responsibility. That's my responsibility to ensure that the PNM is available to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, and we be the best that we can be. And when we are that, we continue to shout, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.